This is Cheche, the show where opinion counts. Good morning and thank you for joining us. I'm Hussein Mohammed, sitting in for Udwa Kamimo. After the unanimous decision that upheld President Kenyatta's victory in the repeat presidential election, the head of state has assured that he will be president for all amid the division that has been created by the endless political rivalry. NASA, meanwhile, which was not a litigant in the election petition, has been silent thus far, only saying an announcement will be made in 5 days. Well, now 3 days' time. We look at the state of the nation today on Cheche. Be part of the conversation by texting us on 22422 or using the hashtag Cheche on Twitter. Our guest this morning, Dr. Hassan Kinyua, Director of Religious Affairs at the Supreme Council of Kenya Muslims, also Director, Interfaith Council of Kenya and Peace League Africa. Thank you for making time for us this morning. And Professor David Kodia, a Bishop with the Anglican Church of Kenya in Bondo. Thanks for making time for us this morning. Mutegi Njau and Charles Odhiambo are our regular panelists. We also thank you for making time for us this morning. So President Kenyatta will now be sworn into office next week. That is on the 28th. First, I'll start with Mutegi and Charles. We haven't heard from you since the Supreme Court ruling on Monday. First, what do you make of that Supreme Court ruling? I'll start with you, Charles.
Kenya is a country that operates under the law. The Supreme Court is a provision of the law. And so I believe Kenyans should go by what the Supreme Court decided. Yeah, because we are not a pariah state. No, I don't think anybody has declared that we are out of the Constitution.
Okay. Mutegi?
The Supreme Court was very unanimous that the 26th election was valid. And I've seen a lot of people in the social media saying, oh, you know, it didn't make any difference. Legally, yes, but legitimization of the president or presidency is not there. So what needs to be done is what the president has said, that he is going to take everybody in. That's where the worry was.
Okay. So is that an end, Charles? Is it an end
of course it doesn't,
to the political stalemate? I mean, is it closure?
It doesn't mean if I agree, I accept what you have said, I agree with you. So like NASA have said, first of all, they were not part of the litigation. And secondly, they have said very clearly that, I remember Moses Wetangula, one of the NASA leaders, saying, we will accept, but we do not agree. We accept because we want to operate within the laws, but we have our opinion about the prevailing circumstances. Yeah.
Dr. Kinyua?
I think the best is just to agree that we have a constitution and we go with the rule of law. As long as the Supreme Court has made its ruling, we just all have to agree on that. But the only thing now we need to see is the president making sure that he fulfills the promise he has made to Kenyans, because he is the uniting factor in this country and is the symbol of unity according to the Constitution.
Professor Kodia?
Yes, I want to say that the decision by the Supreme Court to uphold Uhuru's win cannot be challenged now in any other court of law, because that is the final decision. And the Kenyans, being law-abiding, have no choice but to accept that. And the thing is, what's the way forward? Because we have almost half of the nation that feels that that's not the right way. So the president has the honest task of showing leadership for the way forward. Yeah.
Is it an end to the political stalemate in itself? Legally it is. But do you think also politically it is? That's what Mutegi was talking about.
Legally, that is the end of the matter. But when it comes to politics, that's a different thing altogether. We are now transiting into another phase of our political history. Now, how are we going to behave after this?
To me, it depends on what the president does. When he appoints his cabinet, when he appoints people in power, because the really is a question of resources, sharing resources. Devolution is there to take care of certain things. But NASA is not happy about the way devolution is being carried out. They think the central government is keeping a lot of money and that many appointments are being made. In fact, they say only 2 tribes, which I don't agree with and don't have to. But it depends on what the president does. And it depends on the reaction of the opposition, whether they accept the offer because he has offered, and he offered even on after the 8th election.
You know, offering is one thing.
Yes.
Making it practical is another. Yeah. And for me, I want to take it beyond, it's the end of everything legally, but it's, I think, the beginning of everything socially and politically. Socially, because half of the social structure of this country is disgruntled. The other half is acceptable and is moving on. So how do you integrate these two halves, like Bishop says? And more importantly, where NASA now comes in, the political aspect. Because so if Kenyans accept and agree to integrate socially, regardless of what the political aspect plays in, it will be off. And that is where now I bring in Bishop and Daktari here and ask them, there was a time when the church, the mosque would talk and the whole country would listen. What happened?
You don't think they've been assertive enough as they were before?
I actually think they have been taking sides enough to make things even worse.
Okay, Dr. Kinyo, you respond to that.
I think my brother is right in a way, because even yesterday we had a meeting of religious leaders from almost the entire nation. And for sure, there are times we have never agreed. Because when we come, for example, to the media, you don't have to ask which side I am. You just have to know my name. When you know my name, then you know which side I am. And this is because I've been to several media before coming here today, almost 7 or 10 times. I've been in media since 8th August up to now. And unfortunately, there are times we also go to the media with some religious leaders, and unfortunately, they state categorically that we are in such a side. That is not good for religious leaders. Religious leaders, we are supposed to stand for the people who are suffering, especially Kenyans. And yesterday, I talked and told my fellow religious leaders, we are wrong. Because even we saw Raila Odinga saying that we are religious leaders. We used to have Muge and the rest. And the issue is, Hussein, you see ourselves many times coming to media, like right now we are speaking here, but when people are killed in Kibera, we are not there. There are mosques in Kibera, there are churches in Kibera, you don't see us going there. When people need us, those people need us, because Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, our president, and also Right Honorable Raila Odinga are citizens just like we are citizens. So what we are supposed to say is that every time there are problems in Mathare, in Babadogo, in Kibera, in Kisumu, religious leaders should be seen there, because they are the first person who's speaking for these people who are suffering. Because these people come to church every Sunday, they come to mosque every Friday, they go to SDA every Saturday. So we are the ones who are supposed to take care of them even before the government, according to what I understand. But we have been quiet.
But do you think, and you all can comment about this, I'll start with you, Kinyo, though. Do you think the church or the religious leaders, I mean, I believe as media and many other institutions in this country, it's among the last bastions or the last institutions that are still given credibility, that you don't get perception or you don't get judged because of your second name. But you're talking as if you're already feeling their divisions, even in the church or in the mosque or in the religious leaders or clergy, based on their second names.
For sure, there is division. Because even during all this period, you could see sometimes we go to come, we meet, we agree to have a statement, and sometimes if the statement do not augur well with a certain party, then you realize that the religious leaders divide themselves according to what comes there. And I was telling them yesterday that we don't have to fear, because fear is the worst thing we can have as religious leaders. The only person or the only being we are supposed to fear is God. We are supposed to speak the truth, because Quran is very clear. Quran tells us that Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu taqullaha wa qulu qawlan sadida yuslih lakum a'malakum wa yaghfir lakum dhunubakum wa man yuti illa rasula faqad faza fawzan 'azima. O ye who believe, speak the truth against anyone. And the Bible also, it says that you should speak the truth and the truth shall set you free. Because there are times we have decided to go, for example, to Mathare, to other places, and there are people who tell us, before you go there, go and meet Minister so-and-so before going there. The issue is, if we go to such a place with a Minister so-and-so, then to those people, it means that they are the ones funding us to go there. I believe we religious leaders do not have mandate to go to any minister to go and deal with the problems in our people, because we deal with these problems daily and we don't need those ministers.
Okay.
Yes.
So I can deduce that what Charles is saying, or the question Charles is saying, you're almost agreeing with him. You've not done very well then.
That's very true.
I don't know what you think.
Yes, I also want to concur with them, but with a slight difference. Scenarios have changed over the years. The time when Mugos or Kolos, guitarists, they were given that highlights, I think have gone. Because during their time, Kenya was under one single party state. And dictatorship was too immense. And there was no voice of opposition that could be heard in the nation. Church came in, filled in that gap. Now with the coming of multipartyism, the assumption was that the opposition in politics would take up their rightful place. And the church or religious leaders will now take a back seat to watch. But sometimes when we come in, when we feel that something is not right, or the opposition is not doing what they are supposed to be doing, we come in. Media tends to give more eminence or coverage to the politicians. I want to tell you as an example. I was talking about corruption one day in a church. And I also talked during the coalition government, where there was this maize scandal and all those things. And I was cheered, in fact, by the congregation. To my amazement, what a politician said in that same congregation, that's what carried the day. So you see, sometimes you are also not helping the church much or religious leaders much, because the platform that we can be able to use is only the media. Otherwise, our jurisdiction is very limited. So we may be saying the same thing. We may be talking against these ills. We may be making appeals, but it's the media to share our concern with the nation.
But we agree with the Sheikh here that religious leaders also are divided just as much as the media. That you will see by your name, like he said, since your name is so-and-so, so we know where you belong to.
He's so lucky his name is Kodia, so we don't.
If he's Bishop,
maybe I'm from Nigeria.
So my question is, isn't it a fact that the religious leaders also are divided by either politics or ethnicity?
Yes, you are right. That one I cannot object to, because as it is, one thing we also need to understand, that religious people, they are ministering to people with diverse interests. We have politicians, we have business people, these are voters at the same time. They also need to be pastored in one way or the other. So there is that high temptation to please them at the expense of the values that you are supposed to be guarding. So to that extent, yes, I would say they are divided.
Just like you mentioned, if you look at the past, Bishop Muge was a Kalenjin, Bishop Kitari was a Kikuyu, Bishop Mwananzeki, all of them were religious leaders at top level. Yes. There was no tribalism then. They were all united in their mission about liberating the country. This has now stopped.
Cheche, you feel there's tribalism now in the
of course it is. I mean, political parties and tribalism is our ethnicity, tribalism. So those fellows used to meet and organize conferences. In fact, I attend many conferences of NCCK, many conferences of Law Society of Kenya, all of them without any tribal inclination. But these days, tribalism has finished everything.
Hussein, ahead of the August 8th elections, I don't know if maybe I missed out, but did you ever see a single Luo cleric praying for Uhuru Kenyatta to win the election? Or did you see a single Kikuyu cleric pray for Raila to win the elections? What does that tell you?
Yeah. I can't remember. I'll be honest. I can't remember if that happened.
Yes, what I must say, Hussein, is that for sure, we ourselves have already realized that we have a problem. And that is why from yesterday, we decided that we are no longer going to be divided. We remember Professor Al-Busaidi. We remember him. There's a day he talked, and the President Kibaki was there. And there is something Kibaki had done, I don't remember what he did. And Professor Al-Busaidi stood on behalf of all religious leaders in this country and told President Kibaki, you are wrong. I remember that day. And from that day, we remember Kibaki changed his way of governing this country. We remember. And we have decided to do the same. When we see anything wrong, we will not care about our religion or our tribe or our ethnicity, but we'll speak the truth from now. And Kenyans should count on us.
He was talking, I can't speak for the media, and we have senior members of the media here, but you were talking about the media not helping you enough. Do you think, you'll start responding, Professor, do you think it has anything to do with the church or the religious leaders' message not being assertive enough? Most of the time, the message seems to be on the fence and not really attacking what the problem is. Does it have anything to do with that?
There are two fronts to this. One is that the media has been more tolerant to politicians more than the church people or religious people. Another thing is that the division which is now rocking the church leadership or religious leadership, it is also a cause for worry. Because I've been interacting with some religious leaders, just like what Sheikh was saying, exactly. When it comes even to making a statement, you realize that those who are in the leadership of a specific religious group would tend to lean towards their favorite, political leaders. Even at a point of compromising the basic Christian principles that they stand for. So to that extent, I would say I would spare the media on that, but I will only deal with the media when it comes to giving highlights on the issues we are raising. They seem to be more tolerant to politicians.
You take it, does it have anything to do with messaging? You've been there when religious leaders were given so much prominence when they were talking before.
I don't know. Because it depends on where you are reporting from or who you are working for. Take for instance radio stations or even newspapers. Radio stations are owned by politicians. TV stations are owned by politicians. So whoever pays the piper.
But again,
it depends, not all of them, of course.
Yeah, many of them.
Charles,
Again, I'm not really qualified to talk about the media in the presence of Mutegi, but from my little knowledge, the media's main obligation is to the newsmaker. If today you blow hot, tomorrow you blow cold, the next day you are lukewarm, I mean, who will have time for you? I'll give you an example. If Reverend Timothy Njoya calls a press conference today, he's not a politician, the media will give him coverage. Because what he has stood for, he stands for, and will remain standing for. If you go to the coast, we have leaders of the Islamic faith. If they call a press conference today, the media will go. But the challenge I want to believe with the media and the people of the clock today is today, they say this, tomorrow they say that. When people are killed, they are not there and blood has been shed. Sometimes the money that is looted from public coffers is given to them in church and they receive it and start praying for Mutegi to be a leader.
Okay, let's move on from this now. We are all talking about what the president has said before his speech that is on the inauguration day when he will be sworn in, that is on next week on Tuesday 28th. You're all talking about how the onus is on him now to make sure he unites the country. And I'll start with you, Dr. Kenywa. How best do you think he can do that? Is it about appointments? How does he reach out to this other, part of the country that is still dissatisfied with what has happened politically?
The best way the president can do this, one, I think, is to have dialogue with especially the aggrieved parties. Because we have people in western region of this country who believe that there is a problem. So I think he should reach out to them. Secondly, I think in his appointments, he should make sure that all tribes in this country fit in his cabinet. If he does that, then, and not only in cabinet, but also in other positions, because we have many other positions in this government. So if we see distribution of those appointments in a balanced manner, I'm so sure Kenyans will be okay with that.
But if that, the history is this, when the president does appoint people from other regions, he appoints those people who are for him. Say, for instance, people who have been campaigning for him in those areas. He will not take people who are supporting NASA, for instance, in his cabinet or parastatal jobs.
And I think
that doesn't help.
And that's what he should do now. According to me, that's what a president should do. You should go and appoint someone. You know what we say, for example,
because they are qualified.
No, let me explain something. For example, you look at some governments, for example, some county governments, you realize that someone is appointed, for example, a chief executive, for example, and you read her name is a Luo name, for example. But as you come to realize, you realize that that person is not a Luo, she's a Kikuyu or a Nembian or a Meru, but the husband is a Luo. So for people listening outside might think that this is from our area or region, only to know that now this lady is not from that area. The same happens, for example, someone is given an appointment in the government and the surname is from that area, but that person is not from that area or married to the person. So those are the things that the president should look at and go and reach out to even those ones who did not campaign for him. And this is not only with the president, also in the county governments.
Prof.
Yes, I think one thing is that presidency is a national institution. And as a national institution, it is supported, facilitated by taxpayers. And irrespective of where a person comes from, we have a stake. Every Kenyan has a stake in this government, whether you are from NASA or from Jubilee or from whatever. And I would say only two things. First, before his swearing in, Kenya, we are suffering from spiritual and moral poverty. The nation needs healing. The first thing the president needs to do, and maybe his deputy, is to go in a secluded place, even for one day, for prayers, and reflect. He should be there alone and reflect on how best he thinks he can move this country forward. You know, prayer life is very important in our nation. And look at even our own constitution. Begins with God. He has to place God first in everything. And he must reflect deeply. Why are we here? What has gone wrong? Why are we in this political quagmire? After that deep reflection, I think he will come back a very rejuvenated leader that can unite and puts the country's interests first. He should be above Jubilee. He should be above region. He should now see himself as a leader that can unite all Kenyans. The onus is on him. NASA leadership, they don't have the mandate to unite the people. It is the president, because they are not voted in. By the end of the day, it is the president who is going to be taken into account, not even Raila, because Raila is nowhere within the national leadership. In a structured leadership, that's what I mean.
But what
so the onus is with the president.
But what can the president do? Because some people in NASA have said they do not recognize him. They do not accept that he is the president. They think Raila is the president. And even if he extends his hand, they reject. What can the president do?
I think that is a defeatist kind of approach. Once you are the president of the nation, you are the president of the nation. Whatever people or objections you get from other quarters, he still remains the president of Kenya. That one should not be a way of now saying that I have to sit back because they have said they are not recognizing me. The Western people, they don't recognize me. Will he be working only for the central people or for Rift Valley people? No. Taxpayers' money must be accounted for. And in this way, he has to show statesmanship.
Well, the presidency, okay, the presidency has already spoken and said, as I said before, he will ensure he's the president for all. You have said the NASA leadership does not have a mandate to unite structurally, which is true.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
But then here is a leader who has also, as you said, some say more than half, some say half, some say less than half. For the president also some say more than half or less than half. It depends on how you look at it. But President Kenyatta is the president right now. Raila Odinga also has supporters behind him. So if Raila Odinga says he does not recognize him and any approachment to him says, I don't recognize it, what happens? Are you saying he also doesn't have any mandate?
And that is where leadership comes in.
To who now? On whose part?
On the part of the president. First of all, that's why I'm saying he needs to go, take a day's break, just to reflect, to pray over it. God will give him an answer. He is going to swear by the Bible by the end of the day. Let him take up this bull by the horn. Let him look at the people also around him.
The opposition has no role in this.
No, what I'm saying, the first person to bail the cat in this scenario
must be the president.
Must be the president.
Dr. Kenyon.
I believe Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga has also a mandate and role in uniting Kenyans, because he has a voice. You know, I was sitting with one of religious leaders, and in fact it was in media, and for him, he was talking of a spirit. He was saying that Raila comes with a spirit. When he's in Kenya, you see the entire country heated. And I was asking him, why are you saying that? For me, it's maybe charisma. He has charisma. He speaks and people listen. So if we say that our President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta should go for one day prayer and reflection and then come up and unite people, he cannot unite people if he doesn't get support from the opposition. Because if they keep on resisting, they'll resist everything. If he extend hand to them, you know, unity is among people. Dialogue is among people. So if you want dialogue and you sit alone, you cannot have dialogue.
You only have monologue.
Of course. So I believe Right Honorable Raila Odinga, the opposition also have a mandate in this. For example, our brother Hussein, if for example our parliament goes to parliament, then the NASA parliamentarians or even governors and senators don't go and participate. We don't have a sitting. So what we are trying to say, uniting the country needs each and every person, and especially at this particular time, President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta and Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga should work together to unite Kenyans, because I'm so sure if Raila tells his people, my friends, let us unite this country, let us shine tribalism, I'm so sure they will follow what he says.
Okay, Charles.
The current situation we have, the provisions of the Constitution, one of the biggest reasons why we are in the situation we are in is because of this analogy that the winner takes it all. Once you become president, although we have devolution, which is supposed to make sure that resources are distributed all over, the money still comes from the national government. Its timeliness in dispensation and its quantity in dispensation determines a lot of what goes on at the county level. But somebody said, although we are saying the president, one person described or defined politics as who gets what, where, and when. So if that is the analogy that the presidency we have now has, then the people around him may not even allow what we are talking about. But as Bishop and Daktari and Mutegi say, for me, it starts with the president, not even the opposition leader. The president needs to ask himself, why are Raila's followers saying they are not accepting me as their leader? What can I do so that they accept me as their leader? Because they can't just wake up and say, we don't accept you. There must be a reason. So what's the reason? That's the thing he has to ask himself and find an answer for. And I'm sure there will be dialogue. Okay. Because you can't tell me, come we unite the country, yet my people are being killed every other day, and it's life as usual.
But where does that take the country again? That's the question. You're talking about dialogue. What kind of dialogue? You're talking about appointments. What effect will these appointments have at the end of the day? We'll talk about all that after the break. I'll look at a few SMSs right now. Charles Ocheng in Siaya says, Hussein, our leaders, both political and spiritual, have played hypocrisy. They have been to all kinds of churches, mosques, and shrines and professed godliness, only later to display arrogance and disregard to human life. Charles says, only God will help our country. Dan from Nandi says, unity in Kenya will now come, or will come after Uhuru and Raila meet and agree on how to include Raila in the current government. I don't know what you think about that. We'll talk about that as well. Otherwise, wote wakiwa vichwa ngumu, bado watu wataishi na machungu, and you know the consequences. This is another interesting text here. Nowhere in the world, somebody says, does a president appoint into his cabinet members of the opposition or opposition-leaning people, as those people do not believe in the agenda, on the president's agenda. How do you appoint someone who does not recognize your presidency? Jubilee painted Kenya red. Jubilee has professionals from across the country, he says, that come from all communities that he can pick. That is the reality of multi-party politics world over. Interesting things we still have to talk about. You're watching Cheche. We're taking a short break now. We'll be back after this.